gentlemen, welcome on board. This is your captain speaking with just a little flight information.
Every man has within himself the spirit of Icarus, compelling him to fly. One shouldn't simply say that every pilot has an incredible story when every man has an incredible story. But with 7 billion people on this planet, it's hard to make a film about everyone. Filmmakers on Cloud 9. Pilots have something inside them. Every pilot, whether man or woman. I call it a kind of mental illness, an airborne bacillus with a passion for flying, which is embedded in your skull. Flying has always been the most important thing in all of this. Whether someone's watching me or not, I'll do it. I grew up near a military airbase, so jet aircraft have been flying overhead since childhood. My father took me to an airshow when I was 12 years old. I can remember to this day a Russian Su-27 taking off under full throttle, the flames of its engines glowing as it shot up into the sky and disappeared among the clouds. That's exactly when it started. My first pictures were shot entirely on 8mm film. That was the beginning. The first pictures I remember were of a very popular light aircraft called the Cirrus SR-22, which we were shooting from a second plane. We couldn't open the window or remove the door. The configuration of the plane made it impossible. Now, the sharpness or depth of contrast of these pictures could no doubt be discussed for a very long time. I, however, was bursting with pride. It's often said that this is the toughest environment for photographers and filmmakers, and it's true. In flight, we are in front of a moving background. When cornering in flight, when the plane turns, the background moves too. The entire background is moving. The whole perspective undergoes a dramatic change. We can light the aircraft as it flies into the sunlight. We can take magical pictures like this when the sun blurs the outline of the plane and looks phenomenal. On the other hand, the conditions can be somewhat Spartan. Specialists in filming aircraft or filming from the air are not so plentiful. We frequently use sports cameras when in the air. They are small, have low aerodynamic resistance, and above all, are very light. The pilot, who has a special camera, sometimes even mounted on his helmet, is seen as the cinematographer, although in fact it is the cinematographer who is responsible for preparing the camera and setting its position. And finally, it is the director who decides which scenes will be shown and which won't see the light of day. If I'm involved in film production and the director asks me to check the camera while I'm doing something, then obviously I'll look at it, and then I'll know it's there. This doesn't bother me at all. On the contrary, every time cameras are installed as part of a show or competition, even when I install them myself, after switching the camera on and closing the fairing, I'll still check it again when approaching the runway. On the ground, we can use heavier cameras. Larger cameras open up more possibilities, including, among others, extra high frame rates, which give us slow motion shots. Nowadays, drones are becoming extremely popular. These can be very useful for certain types of shots. Close-ups, zooms, motion blur. However, from what I know, no pilot is willing to fly alongside a drone. The pilots must first get to know each other. This is the pilot of the camera platform on which I fly. In other words, the aircraft from which the images are shot, and he must know who is flying next to him. Remember, in aerial photography, the distance between the aircraft should be as close as possible. Formation flying is primarily about trusting in the skills and control of the guy who is often above me or alongside me. On the other hand, after 20 years, I know how to see in 3 dimensions. I know what the altitude is without checking the altimeter, how much I need, when it's safe, when it's not safe, and when I should keep an eye on it. Pilots often tell the camera operator what he may do, and this is very helpful. Flying air to air is when the photographer or filmmaker is sitting in one plane and around him are 1, 2, 7, 8 other planes, all posing for photos. The first condition for making good pictures is to remove the entire door or window, or at least open it wide. Then we can poke our lenses out and get as much contrast, as much light as possible. And this is where it starts to get tricky, because now we are fighting with Mother Nature. I remember filming a live broadcast of a new helicopter bought by one of the TV stations. There were a lot of photographers, typical agency types, who wanted to take pictures, so there was a second helicopter with the doors off on both sides, and I was flying with one of these photographers. After 20 seconds in flight, I remember he'd taken no shots at all. He was sitting inside, clinging onto the seat in front of him, waiting for the nightmare to end. I remember when I was a young rookie, and this was my first parachute jump. My colleagues had already made hundreds of jumps. The moment the plane lifted off and its wheels no longer touched the ground, one crossed himself, and everybody followed right on cue. I'm not afraid. If I were, I wouldn't do this job and I wouldn't fly. But I am aware of the dangers. My job as a commercial airline pilot is to safely transport jet aircraft and passengers from point A to point B, regardless of the weather. Aerobatics are completely different. I then change from a calm, steadfast captain into an aggressive pilot who really tries to express himself through his aerobatics. A pilot is not just a beautifully pressed uniform, healthy and athletic, who glides through the terminal followed by 10 immaculate and elegantly dressed stewardesses. Such is the image of an airline pilot.
If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far.
On the other hand, we must remember that they are people too, and have their own problems. I often lacked self-discipline at shows. I know that I often overdid it. I flew too low. The environment affected me in this way and no other, that I was a little crazy. I've bent planes many times in my life. My fiancée often says that it's the one form of air sport she doesn't want to see me doing. She somehow tolerates that I'm sitting strapped in next to an open door, putting 100% trust in the pilot. I'm just taking pictures. I'm not holding my breath. I'm not in a position to react at the last moment if something dangerous happens. She says I should simply do what I do. If only I wouldn't do aerobatics. I think that there are no real limits. One can always be better, always be quicker. I know that my body can adapt and that it's just a matter of training. Moving the camera around the propeller or propellers is very dangerous. They are spinning very fast. It's not hard to imagine them cutting like a knife. They can literally cut anything. Many photographers are trying to push the boundaries, trying to get on the runway when someone is taking off, because then their shots will be original and truly unique. The larger the aircraft, the more complex the airport and the machine we fly, the more regulation impinges on this freedom we want to feel when flying. For example, photographers will often say, "Take us over the Palace of Culture," and the pilot immediately replies, "It's forbidden. I can fly you over the Vistula or even the other side of the Vistula, and from there you can shoot the Palace of Culture." And the photographer says, "But why? For me, freedom is the freedom of movement I feel when flying, and I feel it first and foremost when paragliding." It's hard to explain this freedom because we really are limited by a great deal of procedures. Most of this freedom, for me, is in aerobatics. The aircraft imposes virtually no limits. They mainly lie in my mind and body. Seeking 100% freedom in aviation cinematography, or when planes take the starring role, we frequently take advantage of special effects. For example, multiplying the number of aircraft in the air. A good example is the film Pearl Harbor, which used more than 70 real historic aircraft. But in the movie, you see anything from a few dozen to several hundred. For example, combat aircraft were multiplied several times using special effects. They hired physicists as well as pilots who analysed how the planes worked, how 3D models of planes moved in specific scenes. These scenes were often discarded when it was pointed out that aircraft can't do this. In the film Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio, such specialists were not involved. What were these planes up to in this charade, to the extent that I couldn't bear to watch? If I'm going to watch some aviation movie, I need only the first 3 to 4 scenes to tell if the film is idiotic. This can often be seen, for example, in intense action sequences very much, when 2 fighters are dogfighting, actors talk to each other. This is practically impossible.
Damn, this gets good. Come on.
Sometimes the plot skips these details. This is the art of compromise. You need to balance the complex language of flight with language that the viewer will understand. Often the director is not aware of what the plane can do. I have to think ahead. I'm aware that if I make any aircraft move, whether it's an aerobatic, combat or commercial aircraft, it will have certain consequences. I once had such a case where, in a crucial scene where the protagonist is talking and talking, and the camera is facing him, everything went well. We land, and it turns out the camera wasn't working, that at some point it had switched off, and we didn't have those shots. I won't tell you now what it costs to set up a jet fighter just to repeat one shot of his face. And without that shot, the viewer has no program. We can't show anything. The whole story comes unstuck. It doesn't work. We've lost it. We filmmakers who fly with cameras, or have special cameras mounted on planes, must have each element planned out. We must be sure that the image is well taken, the cameras are working, and that the sound is being recorded. First of all, we anticipate that certain elements will need repeating. If the leader or hero says something, it's good to say it once again. One of the coolest pictures I've ever made? A complete circus in the sky. They flew from high to low, under the plane, back to front, air raids. We even flew over the clouds, where it was like a fairy tale, because these planes were travelling from the perspective of these huge cumulus clouds. The view was phenomenal at the time. In addition, each pilot, as if they felt this bacillus, knew what we should show in this picture, how it should look. The effect is one of the best yet, although, as many have said, I hope the best photos are yet to come. I'd like to be in a film about 303 Squadron, piloting a Spitfire and performing aerobatics. It will be an honour for me because of the Polish pilot's achievements and my interest in Polish history. I don't have just one dream. I have many, and step by step, I try to bring them to fruition. I would like this to continue and to develop. Sometimes a man must leave his house and fly, as I have. Read by Jonathan Stapleton.